All right, welcome to Kind of Funny Games Daily for Wednesday, May 5th, 2021. I am your host, Jan Garcia, and joining me today is MinnMax's Ben Hanson.
Hello, Janet Garcia. It's so nice to talk to you on a podcast.
I know. Okay, so Ben, I have a lot of questions for you.
Yes,
One,
please.
how is this not just a piece of MinnMax content at this point with a different overlay?
Legally, it is a piece of MinnMax content. Yeah, we're going to go right from this to actually recording the MinnMax Show podcast right after, and it's going to be a seamless transition for us.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I work with Ben on MinnMax, the MinnMax Show. But Ben, who are you?
Hi, I'm Ben Hanson. I've been on this podcast twice before, but yeah, I left Game Informer after 9 years as the video producer there back in late 2019 and founded MinnMax, which is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better. And yeah, our flagship show is the MinnMax Show podcast. And we have a bunch of other shows that it would take way too long to explain, but something we have every single month, which is one of my favorite things, maybe my most favorite thing in the world right now, is we have a show called Trivia Tower, where it is a community video game trivia contest. Think of it like 1 versus 100. I see a lot of people saying, whatever happened to something like that? That's basically what Trivia Tower is. So if you support MinnMax at any tier on Patreon, you get access to the private Discord. And then in the Discord every month, people compete through different waves of video game trivia to work your way up the Trivia Tower. And then the last person standing wins an Astro A40 headset. And then we give out game codes along the way. But the reason this is relevant to this audience is Greg Miller is joining us on this month's episode. So on Monday, May 17th, he's going to be the co-host for this video game trivia, and anybody can compete. So if you want to check it out, we'd love to have you.
So what does co-hosting entail for something like that? Like, what can people expect to see from Greg's presence there?
A lot of nudity, a lot of hardcore nudity. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but he agreed to all of it. No, it's a lot of Kraken wise. So it's like 5 different floors, right? For the Trivia Tower. And the second floor is typically the guest floor, where they can kind of choose the style of trivia that happens, maybe some of the questions in there. And so if you know Greg Miller's interests very well, you have a good chance of doing well on that floor in particular.
It's probably, I'm guessing, Lego Batman. Something with the Vita, for sure.
It's largely Lego Batman questions.
I'm guessing the answer is probably Patapon 2.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or Patapon 1.
The answers before Trivia Tower happens.
It's like, what if that was just the game? Just like guessing the answers, like with no questions or no context.
Ooh, good idea for a certain round. I'll write it down.
And before we jump into the show, I have to ask Ben, and you mentioned you have like a nicer camera on today than what I normally see you on. What do you use in your hair? Because your curls are immaculate.
Oh,
and I have curly hair, but it's very frizzy.
Thank you so much. Boy, I wish I was smart enough to tell you. First of all, shower, recommended for everybody. And then here's my trick: is I don't dry my hair. I just kind of get out of the shower and kind of dabble it around the sides a little bit, and then that's basically it. And then it's like a good greasy head.
How do you not know what you use? Like, I'm confused by how you can't answer this question.
No, so sometimes I have like some gel from 2009 in my shower. I don't know what it is, but sometimes I'll take like a tiny dab and put that in a little bit.
So your shower setup is more like an archive than like an actual inventory of stuff that you're like restocking.
It's a museum. There's a lot of gunk over everything. I don't know. What's your shower like? How many different bottles of funky stuff you got in there?
God, there's a lot of people that live here, so I guess there's kind of a lot going on. But for me, I have like my 2 products where I'm using Diva Curl, but like it's not really working, as y'all could probably notice. And then there's like my boyfriend's products I sometimes steal, and then there's maybe like an additional product that maybe my dad's using. I don't really know. My dad's weird because he kind of does like a dorm style thing. He's very like reclusive. So he's very much like bringing, cool. Like he has like his like beauty box that he kind of brings in and out, like he's dorming, and like sharing a space. It's very odd.
What do you think it is? What's he hiding?
I don't know. I think he just likes to keep to himself, which that's fair. I can relate to that.
I've never seen a picture of this man, but I imagine just an amazing, just flowing locks of hair.
Oh no, very much just a balding, like 60-year-old immigrant man.
What's the mustache situation?
Oh, he's got a mustache. My dad has like a very nice. He might not have one right now, but he can like grow a pretty epic mustache.
Huh.
Nice.
Also, I don't like the way Ben skirted the question. Like he knows what products he's using. He just doesn't want to tell us secrets.
Fact.
I could run over and get it right now if you want me to run and get this gunky thing. But
now you've made it weird. Let's move away. Let's move away.
Let's save it for the post show. Let's save it for the post show. For the post show. For the post show, we're going to have a product reveal. But I feel like the gunk and grime thing segues perfectly into today's stories, which include Resident Evil Village being balanced on feedback that RE7 was too scary, an RE Village review roundup, Google Stadia staff exits, and so much more, because this is Kind of Funny Games Daily, each and every weekday at 10 a.m. live right here on twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames. If you're watching live, you can correct us if we get stuff wrong. kindoffunny.com/you're wrong. If you don't watch live, you can watch later on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, roosterteeth.com, or listen later on podcast services around the globe by searching Kinda Funny Games Daily. To be part of the show, head over to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, where bronze members or above get to write in, and silver members or above get the show ad-free with the exclusive daily post show, where we will get the official reveal of what Ben Hanson uses in his hair. Some housekeeping for you. The Kind of Funny Gamescast Resident Evil Village review is up on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames and podcast services. A thank you to our Patreon producers, Black Jack and Tom Bach. And today we're brought to you by Honey, but I'll tell you more about that later. For now, let's begin with what is and forever through the eons of time will be the Roper Report. It's time for some news. We have 6 stories today.
Baker's dozen.
I will never get tired of hearing that. I should make that my alarm ringtone, honestly. Baker's doesn't love it so much. We're going to start off with Resident Evil Village being balanced on feedback that RE7 was too scary. This comes from Tom Ivan over at Video Games Chronicle, who is citing an Axios Gaming's interview with the RE Village producer, Toyoshi Kanda. Did I pronounce that right?
Perfect in my ears, Janet.
I think so. Let me know if I'm wrong. You're wrong. In which Kanda states, when we develop a new Resident Evil game, our goal is not always to make it scarier than the previous title, but to find a balance to deliver a scary but fun experience for players. But at the same time, it's always our goal to create something that anybody can feel comfortable jumping in and playing. So we eased up on the tension curve in RE Village relative to RE7 Biohazard so that players aren't in constant fear. While Resident Evil 7 put players in a series of confined spaces, as if the walls of the Baker Mansion were closing in on them, Resident Evil Village's relatively open environments aim to create tension differently. Quote, something we also always have to pay attention to is the tension curve. We also find that people grow immune to fear if they're constantly pitted up against a tense situation or environment. So my question for you, Ben, is, was Resident Evil 7 too scary? Are you excited about the idea of it being dialed back a little bit in terms of the constant tension?
I am a famous coward, Janet. So for me,
you're in good company.
Okay, good. The perfect balance in my mind between action and terror is something like Resident Evil 4, which I understand a lot of people were like, baby game, not scary enough, but that is the right level for me. Even like, I think Resident Evil 3, the remake, that was also not that scary. Resident Evil 2 remake, I love that game, really freaked me out. I think the interesting thing with this story is trying to figure out how important the VR version of RE7 was to how he was seeing the terror of that game, because that game is 4 times scary or 5 times scary if you're playing in PSVR. So I'm wondering if that's what he's factoring in when he's talking about dialing it back.
Yeah. Did you play the PSVR version?
A little bit. Yeah.
Really?
I did not get that far.
What was that like?
It was terrifying. Yeah. I played it with best friend Ronnie a little bit in my apartment. Yeah. It's just like, if you're into the idea of opening a door to a basement in a house and then just staring down the stairs and saying, I don't wanna for 15 minutes, then you'll love the PSVR version of Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, I couldn't do the PSVR version. I would be willing to maybe do like one single Let's Play. You know, I always make the joke of, or a lot of people make that joke of, oh, you couldn't pay me to play whatever. But like in our case, like you can and literally have. Like I quite literally have played games like as part of my job that maybe I wouldn't have before. But yeah, that's one I just definitely wouldn't be able to get behind. I found Resident Evil 7 to be pretty horrifying. It was my first Resident Evil game ever that I played by myself.
Oh wow.
So it was a lot going on. The stalking character in that game is just way too smart. Way too smart. So I'm part of me is like, oh, I'm excited about the idea of like it being dialed back. But then I also feel like, isn't that kind of what made RE7 so special and so stand out? Like you talked about 4 being kind of the pinnacle for you. Did you feel like when it's too scary, it's almost a step back?
I know that a lot of people love it scary, so I would never take that away. But yeah, Resident Evil 2 Remake was a hurdle to play by myself. But I think it's interesting too that they bring up like the importance of spaces and how it was like, oh, the Baker Mansion closing in you added to so much fear. And it's true, like that environment can really change. And so even though I think woods are inherently scary, a village, I don't know if it's the scariest environment, coupled with, now that maybe this is sacrilegious, but I've never been scared of werewolves in my life. Like ghosts, number one, aliens certainly up there. Who's scared of werewolves? Maybe this game will teach me that I should be scared of werewolves.
When you say you're not scared of werewolves, does it mean like you're not scared in your everyday regular life? Like they're not a fear for you? Or is it like you're in game specifically?
I guess, okay, how do we factor fears? It's probably how many nightmares have you had?
Is fear a factor for you?
I mean, it's like, how many nightmares have you had about these things? I don't think in my entire life I've ever had a nightmare about a werewolf coming after me.
No, I think it's more of a niche, like kind of monster, which I'm sure a million people are going to be like, there's so much lore about werewolves, which I know there are, but yeah, I think it's like the fact that it's more removed from being human. Like, do you also find like the more human like horrors a little bit more scary than like if you're fighting just a giant monster?
Yeah, I said ghost number one. I think to be fair, I think like Slender Man style stuff is number one. Like slightly off human, I guess but that's kind of what a werewolf is.
Like Skinny Mario is probably up there for you.
Yep, that's number 2.5, I think, certainly up there. But I guess that's the core terror of a werewolf. It's like, look at this monster you could become at any moment if he just nibbles on you a little bit or whatever works there.
One thing I found interesting too about like this article and like these quotes that came out of this interview is the idea that if you're putting too much fear in all the time, like you'll become immune to the fear. Can't relate. Like, I don't think I've ever had, like, RE7 was scary for almost the entire time, like specifically the section that takes place in the mansion. I never felt any form of less fear. Don't know what is being talked about here.
Yeah, you can't get numb to that stuff. Fear is fear.
No, not at all. I'm really torn on it. I'm excited to be able to like have an easier experience. I do think it's really interesting to think of like, oh, we want Resident Evil to be a game that any player can get into. Cause like, have you found that to be true? Like for me, recommending the series to other people, I'm super scared all the time. Like I can't shoot for the life of me. Like my boyfriend was watching me play and he's like, God, you like have no, the spacing, like I move very in a tank control fashion and things, but yeah, I always found it to be a more accessible horror franchise. Like, do you think that's true of the series?
Yeah, I mean, what's nice is this, they've had so many entries that if you're trying to get somebody into it, you can tailor it to their taste. It's like, okay, do they seem old school? Do you think they'd enjoy the RE2 remake or even the remake? Sorry, just to be clear, the remaster of the remake of the first one. There's like so many different flavors of gameplay and horror levels that in theory you should be able to dial things in just right. Maybe they're an Operation Raccoon City person. You never know who you're giving it to, but you got the options here. But I'm amazed by the fact that you're actually playing Resident Evil Village.
Yeah.
How's it going so far?
I can kind of toss in my 2 cents when we do the review roundup, but it's definitely going. So let's go ahead and jump into that review roundup and what people are thinking of the game so far. So over on Metacritic, it is currently sitting at an 85. Keep in mind, this is just like critic outlet scores for the ones that are on Metacritic. This is not counting, obviously, player base because the game's not out yet. The game comes out on Friday. And before we kick into the actual reviews that are cited on Metacritic, a reminder again, Kind of Funny Gamescast, Resident Evil Village review is up on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames and podcast services. Brittany, oh gosh, I never remember how to pronounce Brittany's last name. Brombacher?
Brombacher.
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm so sorry, Brittany. I know who you are, and I know you know me, and please don't get me shit for this. With from What's Good Games. Yes, absolutely. The panel was mixed with Tim loving it, Britt and Bless just liking it, and Greg saying it was flat. Damn. However, the scores reviews go. I kind of pulled from the high end and the low end of the outlets that I recognize. So I'm just going to read a couple of the blurbs from these reviews. I'm going to read them out as the number from Metacritic. I know some people like have 9 instead of like 100 point, but y'all know what it means. GameSpot gave it a 90, with saying Resident Evil 7 was an excellent return to the horror underpinnings of the franchise, but cunningly alerted with new ideas and a new perspective. Similarly, Village is an intelligent reintroduction of the best action elements of Resident Evil that would capture some of the same things that made RE7 such a breath of fresh air, or maybe rancid, stale, mold-filled air, but in a good way. Village evolves to become its own unique creature. It makes you wonder what beautifully twisted fiend Resident Evil might mutate into in the future. VG247 sitting at an 80, saying, taking alone any one slice of the game, like a single house, the village, even the way the combat handles, has its issues. But combined, it merges into something that's still special, even if it isn't quite as brilliant as RE7 or 2 Remake. It's an easy recommendation, though if you didn't pick up it back in 2017, you might want to play RE7 first. IGN sits at an 80, saying, roaming the streets of Resident Evil Village is like visiting a disturbing and deadly Disneyland, where every attraction is a house of horrors. I got just as big a thrill out of reveling in its frenzied violence as I did retracing my steps through the gradually revealed recess of its sizable village, setting to uncover the darkest story secrets of its monstrous main cast. Boss fights are a bit of a letdown, but the great variety of enemies throughout keeps things tense, especially on hardcore mode. The fact that it's very much a throwback to the fast-paced action of RE4 also means it's largely takes a step back from the slow burn scares of RE7's excellent opening hours, which may disappoint those who prefer more psychological dread to blowing off heads. But if you have an itch for action-heavy survival horror, I already see you getting excited, then Resident Evil Village will scratch it like a fistful of Lady Demetrice's freakish fingernails. Going over to our final review blurb from Games Radar, which is at a 70, a little bit on the lower end. One thought that kept popping into my head while I was playing, I was just remembering how good Resident Evil 7 was. I recently completed another playthrough in preparation for this, along with some revelations and Veronica. Damn, there's a lot of research going into this, just because. And number 7's reverse home invasion slasher terror is still up there as one of the greatest horror games of all time. Resident Evil Village is an enjoyable, occasionally silly monster hunt that's entertaining, but almost completely resets all the incredible work Resident Evil 7 did to reinvent the series.
Wow.
React.
Very interesting. I know that Serial Vasquez from MinnMax wrote the review for Polygon, strangely enough, and he was a big fan of it. Like, he was saying that it was his favorite sequel since 4, so not counting the remakes. But yeah, it seems like action is the big takeaway. Is there's a lot more action than you expect, but it's not going to be as silly as Resident Evil 6, but somewhere inching maybe back towards that end of the spectrum, which, you know, I guess even Resident Evil 3 Remake was already kind of inching that way as well. But I'm very curious to see, like, how ridiculous it goes.
Yeah, like, it's kind of interesting because back to what you were saying before, it's very much, I think, what kind of fan you are of Resident Evil. And like, that's not this, you know, scores are never like, there's no right or wrong. It's all opinion based. And like, you always step to those opinions with like your own feelings. Like, the reality is, like, you being someone who loves 4 and me being someone who like fell in love with it from 7 and Remake 2, I think we're going to have very different takeaways from the same game, even if like, which is interesting because we have like very similar critical opinions. And I think it's just like, where did you enter and what do you like of the franchise? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. I like that you brought up RE3 as well, because that was a game that a lot of people were also like kind of lukewarm on, like both critically and fan based. So I'm wondering if like people are going to be kind of, I'm curious as to what the reception is going to be, especially from fans of Village.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in kind of the storyline now of like Resident Evil 7 was awesome. That was the bold new direction where I think it kind of snuck up on people how good 7 was. I think people were worried out of the gate, like, first person, is this really going to feel like Resident Evil? And now in retrospect, it's like, no, that was actually, we'll be looking at it, you know, years into the future now. It's like, oh no, that was a really cool moment in the franchise, and I wish it kept going down that path instead of apparently more of an action focus. Yeah,
though I think we have to remember that, like, and, you know, a lot of these reviewers mentioning that they played like the entirety of it again to like get a refresher and stuff. Also, shout out to like these reviewers and so many other ones who like went in and like did a bunch of extra like research work. That's not always, you know, needed for a review, but I think it speaks to like how much care and love goes into the franchise from like a critical and fan perspective of like really wanting to, you know, give a thorough assessment of it. I know, you know, Serial, who did the review for Polygon, mentioned like spending a lot of time on it and really wanting to like, you know, get it right and flesh out all those thoughts. But I think we have to mention that RE7, without spoilers, the second half is pretty weak. I don't know. Yeah. I feel like we never talk about that second half.
Yeah, that's true. And it seems like I think Serial in his review he mentioned that this game is like 10 hours, and he seemed to think that it continues to build, which is nice.
Yeah, so it's interesting because there's so much love for like that RE7, but pretty much everyone agrees that like it doesn't follow totally through on like the brilliance that comes from like that first half. So yeah, I have my own opinions on RE Village. I haven't quite beaten it yet, and I won't be giving any spoilers of the game, but it's weird because I feel like I agree with like all of these and they're all very different scores. Like
Right.
I think everyone has just like really apt takes on it. Yeah, it's definitely more actiony. It's definitely less scary, which I was like, once again, I was mixed. I was like a little excited because I'm like, great, it's like less horrific. But then there also were spikes in fear where I was like, never mind, it actually is scary and I don't want to do this anymore. And I actually have had at least 2 nightmares while playing this game. So not related to the game though, just because I'll play right before bed and then yeah, it'll just like I had like a nightmare that like my like legs got cut off, and then like another one about like some other horror. It's like my own horror seeping in through the game. I think just because it can be quite intense, and like it's weird playing something that's more actiony in Resident Evil for me because I came from 7 and 2.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I should use these bullets. Okay, and like that was kind of a weird jump from me. Before we move on from
they can have like a back of the box quote like Resident Evil Village will give you nightmares, ellipses.
Oh, absolutely. With the Z.
It's about other things in life.
Just about life. Just stress dreams. Did you touch the demo at all before we move on? Like, do you have any preliminary thoughts?
No, I didn't play it within that 14-minute period when it was live or whatever the hell was going on. So I was just like, at a certain point, like, I'll just go in and enjoy the full game here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of for the best in some ways, though it felt nice to have like the answers to some things going in. I'm like, this is from the demo, so I was just kind of breezing along.
Right.
But at the same time, like it wasn't a complete one-to-one drop-in situation either, which was kind of a nice mix. All right, moving on to 6 additional staff leaving Stadia to join Haven Studios. This is Daniel Partis over at GameIndustry.biz, who writes, a further 6 members of staff have left Google Stadia for new roles at Haven Studios, the venture founded by former Stadia VP Jade Raymond. And for those who need a refresher, she left Google back in February to form that studio after Google had closed its internal development. Now just still having Stadia, but just going third party on it. And since then, we had that Sony blog post announcing that Haven is working on a new IP for PlayStation. It's funny because that news actually came, I think, like one day before I was last on Games Daily. So it feels like, these stories keep coming up over and over again and getting more context and growing as they go. But continuing with the article, as spotted by a poster on Resetera, staff across multiple disciplines have taken positions at the Montreal-based studio between April and May. Among the hires is Corey May, former head of creative services and publishing at Google Stadia, and former Stadia general manager Sebastian Purel, who is also a co-founder of Haven Studios. The departure follows the recent resignation of studio head of product, John Justice. Ben, what do you think this means for the future, or maybe lack thereof, of Google Stadia?
God, they are in a tough spot. These were a lot of the big names that they had. Shannon Studstill, who's from Sony Santa Monica, is she still at Google Stadia? I forget, but it's interesting to try and figure out who they still have there. One name they still have at Stadia that I'm very curious to see what they do next is Kim Swift, the designer of the first Portal game. She worked with Jade Raymond back at EA Motive for a period before she went on to Google Stadia. And so maybe they'll reunite at some point. But as of now, this according to LinkedIn, Kim Swift is still there. But I mean, at this point, if you're a fan of Stadia, what do you have to look forward to? A slightly improved version of the service you already have?
The next pro offering for their free games,
right.
like pretty much.
I really want to know the status of Harmonix's Stadia project. Like, I love Harmonix so much. I have high hopes for that team doing something at least creative with the Stadia platform, something that hopefully couldn't be done anywhere else. But I have not heard about that for a while, and especially like the basically silence that was met when Pixel Junk Raiders, is that the Q Games game, was released, was just stunning. Like, nobody talked about it, nobody streamed it, it was just immediately off the radar. And so I'm hoping for that Harmonix game to be great and to still be released. But yeah, this is just another nail in the coffin for poor old Google.
Have you played much of Stadia's offerings or dipped into it very much?
No, I played some Pac-Man Battle Royale that existed on Stadia before
Yeah.
Pac-Man 99 existed. Like they had another Battle Royale, which it seems like that has been lost to time already. And dabbled in a couple other things. You know, is that moment of getting it up and running on my phone and saying, "Oh, this is kind of cool," and then just not going back to it. But I still think it's a cool option for folks that can't afford consoles. You know, like I even recommended it to some of my friends who are really eager to play Cyberpunk 2077 before it came out, mind you. But it was like, hey, you don't have a console. Like this is actually a solid way to play it. And so I think there's an avenue for people, but they need to do some work on the PR front at this point.
Yeah, I have like kind of a similar history with Stadia in that I have almost no history with Stadia because I just, it's not something that I was able to spend a lot of time with. I think I barely really went hands-on with it a few months ago when FIFA came to Stadia. Like I got like a code for it and was checking it out. And it was weird because like it was like I was showing up so late. I know it's still going, but I felt so late. But then also like, oh, this has some really cool ideas. And I don't know, it made me a little bit bummed about it because as much as, I love physical media, so you would think I would hate any type of streaming or services like this. But, I think it is going to be the way of the future, digital. And it would have been cool to see it, take off a little bit more. Ben, I have to ask you the age-old question. Was Stadia ahead of its time or was this never really a good idea?
Okay, so let's try and map it out. On Live was ahead of its time. Stadia was exactly on time, comma, maybe it wasn't the best idea. I don't know. I mean, how many people are using xCloud? I have no sense of where this stuff is going to be at, if it's always just going to be kind of that B-tier option for folks if they want it. But it's tough for a B-tier option to be center stage and talk of the town. And at this point, I don't know what they could do to get it back.
Yeah, I think it's hard too because like I think originally they were leaning a lot more into like mainstream and hardcore coverage with like having even a studio at all, an internal dev studio. But it's like for such a casual market. So it had this weird in between of like, well, you're sort of talking about internal stuff as if it's going to be something that like I'm going to care about, but you're like saying it's something more for people who like aren't already in the loop. So I think it sort of struggled in that sense. And also games are hard to make. I think this is a good reminder that games are hard to make.
Yeah, but I'm really curious about what Haven makes.
Me too.
Jade Raymond, she's had a tough go in the game industry for a while here, and the fact that she's still rallying and wants to run up that mountain one more time to try and get this new IP off the ground is great. And like in the PlayStation blog post, the biggest clue we have as for what this game is she says, we want to create worlds where players can escape, have fun, express themselves, and find community. So some sort of multiplayer focused community.
No, I'm just
yeah, you never know. But
find community.
It's interesting to see Corey May go there as well, who is a writer for the first 3 Assassin's Creed games, maybe beyond that. But obviously they worked together back in the Assassin's Creed franchise. And then he has an interesting saga where he was at Certain Affinity and then 2K for a while. And according to Jason Schreier, was the narrative director on the new BioShock that 2K is still working on before he left to go to Google. So he's had a fascinating career. And so it's fun to see this pocket of developers who have a lot of Ubisoft roots within Montreal forming together. And now they get funding from PlayStation in what seems like kind of a Kojima Death Stranding type deal. So it seems like a good, situation, and hopefully they can make the most of it.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I loved reading like what Jade wrote on that post, kind of announcing everything. Like it had a lot of like optimism and excitement in it. And obviously you're always going to sell it that way because it's your new thing. But like, I also like, this is kind of like maybe the hippie in me, but I love a good, like a good unified job change. Everyone just kind of being like, let's all go over here. I think, obviously there is excitement for what's going on at that studio is what that tells me. And also that they probably, at least seemingly, are going to treat those team members well. I mean, they wouldn't all go over if it wasn't something appealing. So I think it's the most exciting part of it.
Yeah.
Speaking of exciting.
I was just going to say, it's a testament to like Jade Raymond's leadership too. Like,
yes, absolutely.
When people actually want to go back to work with her, it's like, okay, there's a nice sign of approval.
It's like the Michael Scott Paper Company if people actually did join, when Michael was like, come to my paper company, and it wasn't just Pam. Spoilers for The Office, but moving on to Gamescom news. This comes over from Video Games Chronicle, in which Company's chief operating officer, Oliver Freese, states that Gamescom is going all Digital. Remember how it was like, it's going to be a hybrid event? Well,
Right.
you can forget that because it's not going to be a hybrid event. The quote states, even though the hybrid concept was very well received by the partners, we had to recognize that Gamescom still comes too early for many companies in the industry due to the required planning reliability. One thing is absolutely clear. All those involved now need planning reliability. That's why we're going for a purely digital Gamescom again this year, and with sufficient lead time, we'll be able to offer the gaming community an even stronger online event at the end of August 2021. And the organizers have also adjusted the show dates, with Gamescom opening night live taking place on Wednesday, August 25th, ahead of the main event on August 26th and 7th. The event was previously billed from the 25th to the 29th, but plans for weekend activities have now scaled back, although, quote, some of the offerings will continue to be available.
Yeah, this is such a tough call to try and map stuff out. Even like at MinnMax here, we're trying to do some of that of like, okay, do we have some sort of meetup in October? Like, trying to figure out what the state of the world is going to be is so tough. And so I understand them playing it safe and just being like, well, even though it seems like now, at least in the States, people are getting more and more comfortable and getting vaccinated. Please get vaccinated, everybody. That like we're inching towards that, but just trying to call that shot and throw the football down the field is too tall of an order for a big organization like Gamescom here.
Yeah, I was super shocked. Like, were you surprised when you originally heard that it was going to be hybrid at all?
Yeah, I guess so. And there was a twisted part of me that's like, God, that'd be really fun to go to Gamescom if I could get there and it would be safe. But, you know, better safe than sorry. Let's just go ahead and wait for next year. And I'm still excited about, you know, Jeff Keighley's opening night live. I think that was a good stream last year, and I'm looking forward to maybe that being the biggest singular event of the year. We don't really know.
Yeah. I was super excited to hear this because I was shocked when they said they were going to do a hybrid event. I was like, I'm also kind of surprised that they didn't mention like COVID at all here. They kind of just said like, oh, it's, you know, difficult to get things together, which is still true. I think both can be true. And I think we'd be, you know, ignorant not to think that COVID does play a role in not making it better, right? It's like, oh, you want me to quickly rush to get together to do something that, one, could be dangerous, and two, could also not even be possible. I mean, like, especially when we think of like the state of the world at large, I think we need to remember that like different countries are handling and going through different elements of the pandemic. Here in the United States, we're very lucky to have like vaccines be accessible to a degree where they're much higher than a lot of other countries. And even with that, we still don't have nearly enough of the population vaccinated to even begin to return to normal, according to like what statistics deem that. Like I know Nintendo World had closed in Japan, like after they opened and they closed again. So, you know, I think things are going to be in flux for a while. And I think we'll see a lot of things of people being like, we're having it, we're not having it, for like the next year, maybe even two. We don't really know.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. I didn't even think about that directly, but when it's literally a beacon for like, hey, all of the world and all of Europe, let's gather in one place, like just trying to mix where other countries are at with their vaccination rollout. That's just, you can't plan for that. That's such a mess.
Yeah. And moving to our next story, we have a winter game developer.
Before that, urgent message from the chat. OMGesus wants you to know that, Janet, you're doing an awesome job.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. Also, I forgot to read it out, but someone had mentioned that you're like their favorite critic. And also, holy cow, you know a lot of stuff. So thank you for being on here. This is super fun.
You.
Yeah, it helps like having been alive during more of those eras than I have been, for sure. A little bit of lead time on that goes a long way. But yeah, always enjoy your insights. This is a fun time. And speaking of that, you mentioned really wanting to talk about this story, so I'm so glad to have you on for it. But Witcher game developer quits company over bullying claims. This comes over from Jason Schreier at Bloomberg, who writes, the director of Witcher 3 resigned after he was accused of bullying colleagues, sending its shares to their steepest decline since March. CD Projekt conducted months-long investigations into allegations against Konrad Tomischkiewicz.
I'm sorry, all four speakers.
Apologies on pronunciation. According to an email staff reviewed by Bloomberg, in the message, Tomischkiewicz wrote that a commission had investigated the allegations and found him not guilty. Quote, nonetheless, a lot of people are feeling fear, stress, or discomfort when working with me. He wrote, he apologized to staff, quote, for all the bad blood I have caused. And it's also worth noting that in addition to his role in The Witcher 3, he was also listed as the second director and head of production for Cyberpunk 2077. So, Ben, why is this such a big deal? And where are you currently sitting on your feelings of CDPR in 2021?
That's a big question. I am one of those people that played Cyberpunk when it came out on PC, and enjoyed it. But I
on
feel
PC,
like
it was wild because I also played it on PC when it came out, and it was like you didn't notice really anything. Like I didn't even really run into very many bugs. So then like to turn around and see like this big cluster was just I wasn't taken aback by it because I kind of knew it was coming, but it's crazy how different those experiences are.
Yeah, it definitely they had plenty of bugs still in there for sure, as you keep unpacking it. But I've kind of been waiting for, just out of curiosity, to see if there's going to be a big kind of rebound for Cyberpunk, if not CD Projekt Red this year, like when it hits new consoles later this year, whenever that is. If there's going to be that narrative, if a lot of sites are going to run the story of like, oh wait, Cyberpunk's actually really good. There's actually a lot of game here, because obviously it made a lot of headlines when it came out, and it was just kind of frustrating that like we're not focusing. Obviously, there's a million things to talk about, but it's like there's so many interesting things about the game and these developers who, worked way too hard to create this game. Like, let's try and celebrate some of their work in there. So I hope some of that good stuff within Cyberpunk rises to the top. But for Conrad's case here, I think it's such a weird one. I mean, when he says specifically, a lot of people are feeling fear when working with me. That's a quote from the man himself. That's probably a good sign that he chose to step aside. I think it's another, it's a sign maybe of CD Projekt Red of where they want to go in the future. The fact that this guy who was found not guilty in a larger sense still realizes, and the company realizes, like, we need to be better than that. We need to be better than not guilty. We need to be actually moving towards creating a positive studio. So I think it's, hats off to the studio and hats off to him, even though apparently he was quite difficult to work with at times, for taking one for the team and stepping down.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, that statement of like, you have to be better than not guilty. There were so many times, and like, due to, I think ethically, I don't think would be right for me to be like, I feel like even though this says not guilty, this person's guilty, because I'm not there, and it's just, right. And also from like, we do play the role of being like journalists and sources for people, like, that's why when you see stories, they always say like alleged and things. Even if there's a lot of evidence pointing to it being true, you can't like legally just be accusing people of violations and things. But I think that's a good example of the ways that even if investigations turn up with someone not being in the wrong, you can still be in the wrong. And even though I don't, urge anyone to necessarily put on their total conspiracy cap, I think it's always important to be mindful of, once there's a need for like investigations of certain things, that already probably tells you a little bit about the culture and that it's in a negative, even if it ends up turning up, oh, they were fine, or it wasn't what we thought it was, like, that's probably still kind of a bad sign. So it is good that this, person has stepped aside and is no longer involved. And I don't know. I mean, CDPR announces another game. Are you excited about it? Like, in that hypothetical world?
I mean, let's just say Witcher 4.
Sure.
Right? I think excitement has shifted over to curious, about just industry curious, I think is a term of just like, how are they going to pull this off? What is that messaging going to be like? How quickly can they be forgived? I mean, you got to remember, it wasn't that long ago where Blizzard was untouchable for the Hong Kong stuff. And now it seems like that's largely forgotten. Like, it is not impossible for a big company to dig itself out of, a basement in terms of public perception.
Yeah, but at the same time, that example is like, which this sounds awful, but I do feel like it's true of like the landscape of the industry. Like, that has to do with actual like societal issues that people seem a lot more, like gray on or not as passionate, rather than like, now if Overwatch 2 is bad, people are going to be mad, which sounds awful. Like, you would think that people care more about like humanity and like social issues than how good the game is. But the connective thread between all of us is like the games and the quality of the game. So I do think it's a lot harder to come back from that element. You mentioned the whole like, in a few years, will we see articles of like, the most talked about hidden gem is Cyberpunk 2077. Yep. I think we totally could see that, but at the same time, I think it was botched in such a specific way with so many layers that I don't think it has the capability. Like, my hot take prediction is I don't think it can be like a No Man's Sky or these other sort of Cinderella stories that we've seen emerge, because like it was just so extreme and so intense, and there were so many like layers of things that went wrong that, you know, I find it hard to believe that that game can redeem itself, even if it had some really cool ideas. As far as like CDPR in general, I've always been a little skeptical. I didn't play The Witcher 3, so like I only played like maybe like an hour or two of it, which in 2020, it feels different than it did, you know, at the time it came out, I think for sure. Not enough time to make an assessment, but I was always kind of skeptical of Cyberpunk 2077 because it wasn't out yet, and everyone just told me they made The Witcher, so they can make it. I'm like, yeah, but like, how? That's not it's not even the same IP, so I don't know how that's relevant. They're like, well, it's the same genre, and I'm like, oh, well, who is right? But then no one cares. But like, yeah, it's like I think, you know, we all learned a lesson in a lot of things, and hopefully, like the lesson that CDPR learned is that having toxic work practices isn't ultimately beneficial, even though they did make a lot of money. But then they also like it's the money that they're leaving on the table in the future that they have to be thinking about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
with this story, I visited CD Projekt Red, spent 2 days there back in 2012, 2013, back at Game Informer for the cover story trip on The Witcher 3 and like the announcement of The Witcher 3. And so I spent a lot of time with Conrad here, and he definitely struck me as a very confident, kind of focused guy. Like, I remember just being, obviously, you know, at 2 days at the studio, I didn't see him being a monster or anything. But I remember during one of our interviews, he was like so blunt, where he was talking about, you know, designing The Witcher 3 and going to an open world, of course. And he's like, and we looked around to the competition, and we played a lot of Skyrim, and Skyrim was generic. The storyline was generic. They really missed the mark. And then he's like, I dare you to name 5 characters from Skyrim. And it was like one of those very blunt things, like, wow, like PR is definitely shifting in their seats about like, we haven't made an open world game yet. Maybe don't attack the #1 open world RPG in the world. But he was going right at it and saying, you know, we are so confident in what we're making here. We're making the perfect RPG. And I was very much in the camp of like,
did you take up the dare for the 5 characters?
No, I did not. I said, you
it's very much a hypothetical question.
I was terrified of him. No, but the interesting thing with him is he left, but he has a brother at the studio who was the lead quest designer for Witcher 3 and then also on Cyberpunk 2077. And I went back and watched some of our old interviews with those two, and it's uncanny, but there's a moment where they joke about like how Conrad's going to retire before Witcher 4 comes out, and then his brother will be the new game director. And so I would put money at this point that his brother will be the game director for whatever the next Witcher project is.
See, and it's stuff like this that makes me think we're living in a simulation, right? Doesn't that seem a little too convenient to have been organic? Like,
are you saying maybe it's just him in an outfit and a disguise, and he's posing as his brother, and he can slip right back in?
No, it's more just that, like, you know, we definitely don't have enough time to get into this to close out the show, but you know, simulation theory, where it's like, you know, we don't have like we have our own consciousness, but basically we're like a really advanced version of a video game. Yeah. So like when weird stuff happens, it's just like a glitch in the game. I feel like that story is an example of proving simulation theory correct. Because a guy is a brother? Yeah. Yeah, so but like where it's like where he said it and then it happened later, it's like a little too tied. If that does happen, it's a little too tied together. You know what I mean? It
is weird. Another little tidbit that I don't think people remember too much is interesting that the original creative director for Cyberpunk 2077 left, last year, 2 years ago, and is now a creative director at an unknown project over at Blizzard. So, you know, made the comparison before, but there's a direct transition there. But I'm so curious to see what that person creates at Blizzard. Hopefully it's something big and new.
Yeah, and speaking of new stuff, our very last story, very brief one, there's some cool PlayStation 5 shoes dropping. I enjoy all of the weird merch collabs, and I love talking about random weird products, so I had to bring this one up. Paul George of the LA Clippers posted on the PlayStation blog, which I love that sentence, even if he maybe, I don't know how much he like sat and opened his word processor and typed this whole thing out, announcing his collab with PlayStation to release the PG5 PlayStation 5 colorway. It comes out May 14th in select regions, and for the US, it'll be available May 27th. Do you think this will be harder or easier to get than a PlayStation 5 right now? Because sneaker culture goes hard, for those who don't know. It is difficult to get stuff.
Oh, can you imagine if they put an Intel chip inside of a shoe, how difficult that would be to find? The double whammy. But right now, yeah, I just assume it's impossible. All I know about the internet and the world these days is whatever you want to buy is impossible to find.
Yes. If you want it, you probably can't get it. So please take a look at this thing that you probably can't buy without paying a ridiculous upcharge on eBay or any of the like sneaker resellers like the GOAT app and stuff. Yes, I have the GOAT app downloaded. One day I will order a bunch of shoes that I don't need because I love sneakers. But it's got a lot of cool detailing. It's, white like the PlayStation 5. It has like the, blue like on the swoosh and things, and it has like the PlayStation logo and also like PG's logo as well and all this stuff. So I like these little collabs. I also like that they're just not quite as gamey as some of the things you see on these collabs normally, where there's like, Mario bricks on the sides of the sneaker or anything like that. So they're a little bit more subtle. I think that's kind of a fun drop if you're interested in sneakers and PlayStation.
It does have the sacred symbols all over like the white part.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So we are getting a little bit of Mario brick. But I feel like that's... Go ahead. Oh, I just think that is a lot. Like, it is doing a lot. I like it, though. It reminds me of the controller. And that's what they're going for.
That's what I was going to say. It's that when you look really closely at, like, the PlayStation 5 stuff, like, you have the little symbols there. But it's not, like, immediately in your face type deal. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't type situation. But... getting those PlayStation 5 sneakers that we just talked about is so far away, and they're also not even a game, Ben. So if I wanted to know what is coming to mom and grab shops today, where would I look?
The official list of upcoming software across each and every platform as listed by the Kind of Funny Games Daily Show hosts each and every weekday.
Hell yeah. Out today.
Yeah.
Non-Guns Doppelganger Edition for PS4, Dull Grey on Xbox One, Almighty Kill Your Gods PC, Distant Kingdoms PC, Infernal Radiation on Switch, Boris the Rocket on Switch, Save Me Mr. Takao? I know this game, but I don't remember.
Or is that the name of a game, Janet?
That's me. That's both. A little bit of Column A, Loba Column B. It's the name of the game. Save Me Mr. Takao. Y'all know what it means. Definitive Edition. Taco, right? Definitive Edition on Switch, 2-in-1 application driver and serial killer sniper on Switch. New dates as in new releases.
I'm going to keep interrupting you. I don't know what this game is, but I love the idea of a marketing team pushing hard to market the game called Dull Grey on Xbox One. That is a heft.
It's right up there with like when Xbox had the SAD edition.
Yes. Yeah.
Cue up Dull Grey on your SAD and you just have a cozy Sunday afternoon.
Do you want me to pull up the trailer for this?
You know what? We shouldn't insult Dull Grey and the fine folks working on it without understanding what it is.
Sure.
I will say though, whenever I read through this kind of list, unless I happen to know like the games already, it's always like someone could have just put random combinations of words and I would have no way of knowing.
Boris the Rocket. There we go. On Switch. These are always fun.
I know, they're so cool.
Dull Grey, this is Xbox One. So last gen at this point, but ooh.
It is gray.
But far from dull.
The drama of a single choice. Okay, this is a me game, not gonna lie.
Okay. Yep.
I like the kind of like comic book aspect of it that it's got going on.
Yeah.
This is absolutely the kind of thing, and I say this with like no shade to the game itself, because like y'all know, those who follow me know I play like a bunch of everything, where I'd search like an eShop or something, and I'm like, this could be interesting, and then I just end up dropping like $10, $20 on like 8 games, and I'm like, one of these is gonna stick.
Well, this is the game, as it's letting you know, the game about how to find your happiness. So you know what? It's about making your life less dull gray. So they got us in the end.
Exactly. And then if that doesn't work out, there's always 2-in-1 application driver and serial killer sniper. So you got a couple things to just bounce off of. But for things to look forward to as well, we have Cloudpunk is getting a sequel-sized DLC for PC on May 25th. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 lands on Nintendo Switch on June 25th. So you can like literally, you could flip the Switch, do a kick flip, and then do it in the game. Like it's like the content possibilities are unlimited with this one, y'all. Go ahead and cop it. Stonefly lands on June 1st for Switch, PS4, Microsoft Windows, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and Xbox One. I'm so excited about Stonefly, the game where you're like piloting that little like mech, and it just, the story looks interesting, the world looks interesting. I'm down for it. Full transparency, Belinda, I think is working on the writing on that one, right? Kevin, do I have that right?
Oh man, I have no idea.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure I know people working on that, but it looks cool. Galactic Mining Corp lands on May 18th on Steam as well. Very quickly, deals of the day. Castlevania Anniversary Collection is available on Steam for just $4.20. Is that a 420 joke? I don't know, but it is on Green Man Gaming. Like, it seems like the chances are more than zero that that's a joke. And the Nintendo Switch Lite Gray is available on Newegg, where you get like a $10 Newegg gift card when you buy it for the $200 on Newegg. Really quickly, let's try to get to
the Games Daily is brought to you by the color gray. We just want to let everybody know.
Yes, absolutely. Really quick, let's try to jump and get to at least one question. We can always take care of the rest of them in the post. Oh, this is an interesting one. So BJ Bernardo says, hey, y'all, do you guys see a future where Game Pass is on a PlayStation console? Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't PlayStation be cool with this? Because then they would have literally all the exclusive games on one console. Or am I dreaming? I have so many thoughts, but Ben, is that a dream or is that the future?
No, that is such a cool idea. And in a perfect world, PlayStation would realize that is an amazing way to market this console here, is that you can play everything on it. You know, the Nintendo stuff, I guess, doesn't count. But at the same time, I mean, as they talked about in yesterday's episode of Games Daily, like, PlayStation is not too eager to go out of its way to play ball with other companies. You know, I don't see this happening. I don't see them, you know, getting behind the messaging of promoting how cool Game Pass is, even if it's ultimately to sell their hardware, when they're in the, you know, they're in the interest of selling their software to make a profit here.
Yeah, I don't see that ever happening either. Like, pretty much across, I don't really see it happening across any of the consoles. I think, you know, as much as, or like the big three, when we think of that, as much as like people will push the narrative of like, we're not competing because we're doing something so special and different that like we're not even, how could we compete with anyone? Because no one's as innovative as us, but everyone says that. So how true is that really? Like, if everyone's unique, right, then how unique is it? So I think it's very much the situation where, yeah, they all do their own thing. And I think they very much want to have it be about like associating PlayStation stuff with PlayStation things, and knowing that like when it comes to getting, you know, the latest and greatest games and the best kind of experiences and all these other features, that you're going to have to go to PlayStation. I feel like that's sort of the narrative that they want to push, which makes sense. As far as anything for You're Wrong, Belinda is the writer for Stonefly. I thought so. Thank you, Nanobiologist. So that's cool. And I believe also from the Nanobiologist, the CDPR creative director left in early 2019 for Blizzard.
There we go.
So just kind of clarification on that. And then Frankfurter said it looks like they're going to do a random draw on the Nike sneakers app for the shoes, the PG-13 shoes, and that they'd cost $120. So I think usually there's entries. That's not really You're Wrong. It's more of like your, you know, heads up or whatever. But yeah, usually there's some form of like promotional things on that. Also, Ben, do you own any like weird collab stuff? Like gamer? Do you have like gamer garb? Like, I don't know if that's really your jam.
So you have a t-shirt that says MinnMax on it. I have like, I guess some old merch shirts and stuff. Like I had like a punch out for the Wii shirt and stuff like that. That's cool. But yeah, I think the sneakers thing is still a little outside my realm of hipness. Like,
you're too washed to wear. Well, what are you wearing for shoes mostly? Are you not a sneakers person?
Let's see.
I like that you have to look down. Are you wearing shoes in your house?
This slipper.
Oh, they're just slippers. Yo, that slipper has like major dad energy.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm not even a dad. I can't even claim that. It just, okay, I know that I'm very uncool. I accepted that at age 3, and I've been riding it straight to the grave. But at the same time, like, this sneaker craze, it's like, it feels as if everybody is suddenly into like toothbrushes or something. It's like, wait, people really care about shoes? What's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, that's always, I feel like,
Ben, be careful. I really care about shoes. Really, like the amount of money these guys are spending. Just be careful, Ben. It's wild out there.
Can you do a Twitch poll, Kevin, just to find out right now? Do you care about shoes in the chat?
I'm gonna be 100% honest. Like, I mean, that's a possibility. I don't know if I know the buttons. Let me see.
I think it's
/ poll should do it.
Enter. Yeah.
/ poll should do it.
All right, I'm going to do sneakers.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yee or knee.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but I care about sneakers. I just haven't been able to get
3 minutes. Start poll.
Okay,
sure.
Perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, I care about my sneakers. I haven't gotten like really nice ones lately, and I don't follow the drops because like it's too intense, but very much like, yeah, sneaker culture has been a thing for such a long time, and the whole like it's hard to get things you want. It reminds me of that like, that meme of like the two guys and the about to like get executed, and it's like, oh, first time, like one of them turns to the other. It's exactly that for sneaker culture versus gaming culture. So I do find these like collabs interesting.
How did you get into sneaker culture?
I've always liked hip hop. Like I grew up listening to exclusively hip hop. I listened to only hip hop from when I was born till 8th grade. 7th or 8th grade was the first time I listened to like a rock album and was like, this is something I like. Like I only listen to hip hop and R&B. So like that's obviously sneakers are huge in like that community. Yeah, that's basically it. And I think, my brother played basketball a lot too when he was like in high school. He's 6 years older than me. So I've always had an appreciation for sneakers. I never really was like, a sneakerhead in the sense that like I don't have like a really cool closet of a bunch of different shoes, but I would love to be that person one day. And I do have the Goat app downloaded on my phone, saving stuff because maybe one day, I don't know, throw it on a Christmas list, a birthday, something like that.
Smart. All right. I think that hip hop angle, that's interesting. Yeah. That might be a good gateway for a lot of folks. That
I had a very much like, oh my God, back in the day, I was very like all branded out too. I wish I had photos of it because I used to wear like exclusively like, I grew up in like the, late 90s, early 2000s, and I wore exclusively like Rockaware. Like I had an all like, I don't know if it was a Rockaware jumpsuit. It was like a pink velour, like it had a hat. It was like a whole thing.
Do you have pictures?
I don't think I have pictures because I just genuinely don't have any pictures from when I was little. But like I'll try to find at least one. I have one photo of me, I think, wearing a Rockaware jacket, and my brother was wearing, I think, the coat 50 Cent's clothing brand made. Like G-Unit had some clothes, so he had that on. We had a very specific vibe during those years, where I was like very heavy into brands for everything, and now I don't get brand pretty much anything except for sneakers. So far, we got about like a minute left in the poll. People are leaning heavily on Nah. We're 58% Nah and 42% Yee. Also, if you have dope sneakers, send me some photos of these dope sneakers. Like tag me on Twitter. I want to see your dope sneaker collection. I do appreciate getting good shoes. I just don't follow the drops as much.
Tim's got a really cool wall where he's got a bunch of like plastic bins.
Tim would have a wall.
It looks really cool. I have wide feet and like I have to buy now like stupid, like I walk the dog all the time. So I have to buy like shoes for walking. And it's like, Brooks, I can get out of here. It's dumb.
Oh, are you wearing like the running shoes? Because I have a lot of running shoes too. Or yeah, I've worn a lot of running shoes over the years.
But like I have to wear like not cool running shoes, but like
there really are no cool running shoes. They're all ugly.
Nah, but they have like cool ugly. Like the Nike makes all the ones with the Air Plus thing where it's like it's all like smart and stuff. But like these are just dumb. They're just comfortable.
I can't run in Nikes. I'm wearing like the chunky Asics. Like I don't look good out there. Like I have like my sleekest shoe is like the Brooks Ravena, and that doesn't look. That has big dead energy as well.
I used to really, really like Vans. I get that that's not like a fancy shoe, but like the variety in Vans, like I got my Mosmer like Harry Potter ones that are dope. Oh man, hurt to wear though now. Sucks.
I was big into Converse. Talk about having white feet. Those
dude,
shoes
when
are basically
I was young,
just like a stick. It's just a
honestly,
line.
that's probably why my feet are so fucked up. Because for the first from like ages 12 to like 18, I just had 20 different pair of Chucks.
If you wore Chuck Taylors, you may be entitled to financial compensation. But as for stuff related to this show, tomorrow's hosts are, with Thursday, we got Greg and Tim, and Friday, we got Greg and Jason Schreier coming through. If you're watching live on Twitch, we got a bunch of stuff coming up on Twitch. Kevin, what's coming up on Twitch?
Greg and Mike, they're going to be playing Fall Guys. It's going to be great because, Greg, not so good. Mike, really good. They're trying to get good for this charity stream we got going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
Together they can be one decent gamer. We'll see. We're going to find out. As for now, it is time for the post show, which supports the Save for membership. Can check out that post show or above on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. You can get in on this. But until next time, this has been Kind of Funny Games Daily. See ya. What's up, and welcome to the Patreon post show. we're here. We're keeping it rocking. I'm still Janet. That's still Ben Hanson.
Hello.
And
Thanks for having me here, Janet.
and Ben, so what's going on with your shower stuff? What do you got going on with your hair products?
All right. Hang on. I'll have to go get it. Did it really seem like I was being coy? I promise it's just sheer ignorance. But I'm going to go get the gel I use in the shower. Hang on.
Yeah. And for context, while Ben's getting that, I mentioned on Games Daily that Ben has really defined curls. And those of you who have seen me may have noticed that I should have curls, but instead I have a lot of frizz and breakage and other damages. So I was like, oh, what are you using? And he was like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, how do you not know? You tell me just grabbing bottles in there. You don't know what's going on.
They're impressive curls, honestly. And yeah, I feel like my hair should be like that, but I dyed my hair so much in high school that my hair is just super
Barrett, I'm trying to dye my hair next because just to damage it further. But why not?
Why not? What color would you dye it?
I'm interested in like a deep red, maybe a blue, but it's hard because my hair is like literally almost black. So it's like, that's gonna be a lot of bleach
my wife,
and a lot of money.
Who dyes her hair a lot, she usually has to like bleach twice before she can get color into it.
That's too much.
Yeah.
Just buy a wig at that point, I think.
The problem is I kept putting it off because I was like in high school, I'm like, I'd want to dye my hair. And in college I wanted to, but I just never did it. And now like I did have a point where I felt like I was too old to dye my hair a weird color for the first time. Like if you already do it, I feel like, oh, it's established. But like, I was like, oh, I don't know. But then I'm like, nah, that's stupid. Like you can do whatever you want at any time. So I still want to get it done. Nope.
Yeah.
All right, Ben, what do you got?
Here's, all right, shower recipe. That's what they call these, right? Number 1. You got to get the Head and Shoulders shampoo.
Really?
You got the 2-in-1, because the trick there, Janet, is you don't have to
put I'm being scammed
and then conditioner in. They're 2-in-1, so you just rub this.
There's no way.
There's no way.
Is there anything else? Is that it? You're not telling me that's it right now. This is when
we just learned that Bennett just has naturally like really great hair.
Wait, is there more? Before I talk shit, I want to see if there's more.
Garnier Fructa style curl scrunch nourishing shea. It's very grody and gross. So I use this maybe one day out of the week. I'll put like a tiny dabble in there right after I shampoo. And then I really feel like I bought this in probably 2012. Like it's microscopic amounts when I use it. And then to get the curls, just don't dry your hair. Just don't rub a towel through your head and it'll like...
Maybe my hair is so much longer, but I also feel like this reminds me, there's so many examples of this in my life. Barrett, I don't know if you also sense this or if y'all don't sense it as much because both of you are men, but like men can have like the most basic routines and come out looking beautiful, and it bothers me because like my boyfriend's skincare routine was like non-existent until like only recently. I'm like, hey, you should wash your face with not the soap you use for your body. He's like, oh, okay, sure, but he doesn't have any acne. His skin's super clear all the time. Meanwhile, I'm breaking out. I'm dropping like 50 on Ulta Beauty, trying to like, I'm like reading books. I'm like learning about the skin type I have. I'm like doing all this extra stuff. Yeah, and y'all don't do that. Y'all can just.
I feel like that was me. Like not having to do much was me in high school. Like I did have a thick head of hair back in high school that I took for granted, and then now as an adult, like I'm definitely like more like oily, and then I've been losing hair pretty drastically since 18. So yeah, I get what you're saying. My wife does a lot of studying for me because she wants me to keep my hair as long as I can, and so. Yeah, there's a lot of different hair care products kind of cycling through our house.
I do have, outside of hair, I have changed things in the last year that has been a game changer. I got these oil-absorbing sheets.
Oh, I love those, yeah.
Before I stream or podcast, I just rub this crap on my face, and it's basically like rubbing the hamburger on the wall in The Simpsons, where you just rub until it goes clear. Ew. But it's been a huge game changer. And then I got some sort of, hang on, I'll go get it. Hang on.
Yeah, I hear those for the sheets. I hear they're not as good as, like, I don't think they're like that good for your skin technically, but I also liked using, I don't use them anymore, but I did like using them for like, it's not a permanent fix for having oily skin. Like you just need to kind of deal with it, but it's great for when you stream. Yeah. Or like I've had to put like, I have like a very like shiny face. Like I have a very, very oily skin that I get from my dad. And like I have to, sometimes I'll use like a little powder, like the Mario Badescu powder just to kind of like be blare it. But yeah.
So then the other game changer recently is I got BB Fresh.
Oh.
What is this? Beauty Balm? But like I don't know if some sort of allergy. This is hot content, right? But like my face is really red, and like especially if I drink beer, it just kind of like loses its mind. And so this has seriously been a game changer for me. Where like whenever I'm feeling self-conscious about like red splotchy cheeks, I just like take a little bit of this crap and put it on my cheek, and then I feel like, oh, now I like the way my face looks. And it turns out if you're a guy, you're not really taught that you can change the way your face looks, but it's really a relief. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then the few guys that do change the way their face looks, they like jump up like so many points against like the average man because most guys don't do that. No, this is hot content because a lot of people, you know, we're on camera a lot and things. And I think a lot of people do feel, even though I'll be honest, y'all, I did not have a grand plan for this post show. This was like, I feel like learning what shampoo Ben makes uses. And then that was it.
Post shows for all of our content is just literally just fucking around and hanging out, you know? So this is perfect post show content.
Okay.
So, but to tie it back to like a more grandiose thing that I didn't plan for. Yeah. I mean, we're on camera a lot. And I do know a lot of people who want to make content are very like uncomfortable, like being on camera or whatever, like, and doing all that stuff. So like, I think it's fun, especially from like the men's side of things, to be like, oh, I actually actively use a few products to like make myself appear better, because a lot of people just assume that like men don't do anything to be on camera, and some don't. But like, I know like for E3, like everyone on the IGN stage is in makeup. Literally everyone. The developers, we have like a makeup artist, and everyone's in makeup. Everybody you see is in makeup.
And it's maybe some people overdo it, but I remember there's like a big thing is like being a video producer, like the few times where somebody would wear makeup before an interview is very much like, what is this idiot doing? Like, well, the first time I went to Epic, Cliff Plazinski like had a makeup person come by and like touch up his face, and I was like, okay, pretty boy Cliff, all right, buddy. And now it's like, what? Why not? Like, why not make yourself just look a little bit better? It's not like you have a trailer and you're a complete diva. And so, you know, I remember back at Game Informer too, there's a certain point when Matt Miller, who is still there, a wonderful guy, that he suggested like, hey, we should be wearing makeup on the on the Game Informer Show podcast. And I was flabbergasted. Like, you're out of your mind. That is the lamest thing I've ever heard. They want us to be real. The core of being real is just being as you are. And now in retrospect, he was totally right. Like, we could have looked 10% better on camera. And that results in, I guess, more subs on YouTube. I don't know what the direct correlation is.
It's just a vibe, you know? But yeah, like, I mean, I think, you know, for what it's worth, like, the makeup's still optional. It's not if you were like, no, you can't go on the stage unless you put on it. But we had that option, like, hey, like, we can get, like, and we offered it to anyone that came on our stage. Like, it wasn't needed, but it's like there for just like a quick touch up. I mean, the same way they take care of like literally everything else. Also, I was like, whoa, hold on, this is free makeup. Let's go. And I don't know how to do my makeup, so I'm like, this is great. I'm like, some people also came and like did their makeup themselves because they like wanted to do it themselves. But yeah, like everyone on that stage is in makeup. So remember that if you ever feel like, why is everyone beautiful?
Was it still the same kind of older woman, blonde? Because that was, I think it was like 2 years in a row we had her at Comic-Con. I'm trying to.
I'm going to say probably not, but also I'm basing this on a very, very faulty memory. And like, I know we've had like people that would come sometimes into the like office proper. That was way more occasional for like, we had like a headshots day. And, like,
special like
occasions. Yeah, like really or for our like fun behind the scenes for our like, I think it was like best games of the year video. We had makeup for that too. So that's why I look like a little bit less busted in that video. Cause I was like, okay. I was like, I had like my, you know, my classic, the t-shirt blazer look, which I know is like kind of a whack look, but I have adapted it. You know, it's like I'm going on stage to present a game or something at all times a little bit. But yeah, like everyone was in, well, if you wanted to be in a little bit of makeup for that. That way you look nice when you're being like, these are the games that were good that year.
Right. It's very important. Well, hey, so that's how everybody's beautiful, no matter what you choose to wear. But there are options for you, men. If you want to bump it up a little bit, unless you're curious about your hair, then just use shampoo.
Yeah. Are we good on time, Barrett? Because I actually don't know how long this goes.
We're chilling. You can wrap it up here.
Okay, I'm like, it's like, oh, do I have like 5 minutes left? I'm like, I just tell you some random information. But yes, yeah, this is the post show. for more of this incredible deep dive into pop culture and games, hit us up, or beauty products or whatever y'all want to find out. We can talk about it. It's all here for the post show.
And speaking of deep dives, Ben, where can people find your content?
Oh my gosh, you're so smart. You can follow us. Well, let's see. Probably the best place is go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/MinnMax Show, or you can listen to the MinnMax Show podcast. But what you're mentioning there is we have a whole series called The Deepest Dive, which is our huge community game club discussions. We are creating the best, most thorough discussion about games on the internet. And our next one is for Mass Effect 1. So we're going to be launching that very soon. So we let supporters at any tier submit comments for us to read, and we break it all down. And they are incredibly thorough discussions, but it's all about giving the games the discussions they deserve. So if you enjoyed that,
I really enjoyed The Last of Us Part 2 one, and then I'm halfway through the Batman Arkham Asylum one. Yeah, they're really fun shows. They're really fun.
That's really sweet. Thanks so much. I'm glad you checked it out.
Yeah, I like that y'all are going to have for the Mass Effect 1 specifically, and just kind of in general, like a really cool slew of people who have different backgrounds with the game. I think that's like really valuable whenever you do deep dives onto things or like looks at games in general, to have those different perspectives. And also just like as a compliment to you, Ben, like the amount of content that comes from MinnMax is insane. Like there is so much going on all the time and only more being added. And reminder for those who don't know, I am also on MinnMax. I'm on the MinnMax Show. I will appear on live streams sometimes, among other things. So I am a cohort there, so you can catch me there. And for everything else, at Gameonasis on every platform. I stream, I write reviews, I do a bunch of stuff. But yeah, thanks for having us. This was fun.
Thanks so much, everybody.